When we hear of shootings and mass shootings and the killing of children, it is absolutely normal that our souls feel crushed by something like that. If you're human, if you're normal, you are going to feel sadness, you're going to feel anger, you're going to feel all of those emotions because it is so easy for us to identify with folks that are going through something like that, because for a second we just imagine our children being in the center of that shooting or being a victim of those shootings, and immediately our souls are consumed by it. So I have heard sport figures and different folks speaking about this situation, and I don't want to make fun of the way they feel or question their sincerity about it. But I want to point something out here. Every time we go through a mass shooting or we go through a difficult situation, we always look for politicians for answers. And though the government has a degree of responsibility in many things, the reality is that when it comes down to mass shootings, there are a few things that the government can actually do. I believe that everybody should have a criminal background before they own any weapon. And I believe that folks with mental health issues should not own a gun. I mean, those are things that there are, in my opinion, very easy. They should not take a whole lot of time debating. However, the issue of violence is an issue of the heart. I think that the first thing that we need to ask ourselves is, why is it that man we have armed ourselves this way? We have all kinds of weapons. We have nuclear bombs that can destroy whole regions. Why is it in our hearts that we have gotten to that point that we have those kind of weapons to our disposal? Back in the book of Genesis, when God purged the earth, and he did wipe out the whole earth, wipe out the whole humanity with the exception of Noah, his wife, his sons, and daughters-in-law. The Bible tells us that the earth was filled with corruption. The earth was also filled with violence. And the reason the earth was filled with violence was because outside of Noah and his family, everybody else turned their backs on God. When we reject God, this is what we're going to get: violence. We're going to get corruption. The Bible tells us in Genesis that every intent of the thought of man was evil continuously. This young man, 18-year-old Latino man who was identified as the shooter, no doubt in my mind that was operating under a demonic possession. There's no doubt about it. It is definitely hard for us to comprehend how something will do something like that. It is just flat out evil. So the government is not the solution, even though the government is able to do a few things. People are finding weapons in the streets in Chicago. People are finding weapons in my island, Puerto Rico. Violence is all over the place, and they don't go to these legal stores to buy legal weapons. The weapons are out there. So this is an issue that goes deeper than this. But we still go to politicians, and the problem with politicians is the politicians are not going to resolve this problem. I tell you right now, they're not. Because the nature of politics is to maintain power at all cost. So politics have been around since the beginning, and politics have been like that. As a matter of fact, the moment that the children of Israel asked for a king instead of the system of judges that God established, where he was the king, and then he will have men that will lead under his leadership. That is God's political system. But the moment that Israel asked for a king, that was something that all of the other nations were doing. We asked for trouble, because by essence, politicians, they might start with a desire to do something for the people, but believe me, the system will swallow them. And at the end of the day, it's all about maintaining that power. Now, I want to point something out to you, because in the Bible, we see several examples of politicians that do crazy things just to maintain power. But the number one example in the Bible, the number one injustice, the injustice of all injustice, was committed by Pilate. And the Pharisees, the Jewish leaders, came to Pilate because they wanted Jesus crucified. Okay? They wanted Jesus crucified. And they went to him. And Pilate was trying his best to set Jesus free. He did not want to kill Jesus. It was obvious that Jesus was innocent, even to Pilate, who was not a believer in God Jehovah. Even for him, it was obvious that this was an injustice. Now check this out. When you go to John chapter 19, verses 12 and 13, it tells us, from then on, Pilate tried to set Jesus free, but the Jewish leaders kept shouting, if you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar. When Pilate heard this, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judge's seat at a place known as the stone pavement, which in Aramaic is Gabata. And that was the beginning of Pilate actually giving the order, approving the crucifixion of Christ. Even though he washed his hands and all that, at the end of the day, it was his jurisdiction, it was his decision, and he made that decision. Why? Because when they talk about Caesar, who was the leader in Rome, the big cat in Rome, Pilate did not want to find himself in jeopardy of his position and be in trouble with the big dog. So at that moment, even though he was going back and forth, if you read these interactions in scripture, you see that he was trying hard to set Jesus free. It was that when his power was in jeopardy, he willingly committed and was a part of the greatest injustice of all. So that's why you cannot count on politics. Because, right now you have this nation divided in many topics. And one of those topics is, the right to bear arms. You see what I'm saying? And politicians know that the moment they start messing with that freedom, they're going to lose power. In some states in the United States, like this young man, apparently, I don't know, but that's what I've been hearing through the news. He turned 18 and he went on and bought his weapons. No need for a background check, no need for that. He just went out there and and bought this weapon and did what he did. So in some states, it's like that. You have that kind of freedom. Texas is one of them. I believe Alaska is one of them, and I believe that even Arizona, where I live, is one of those kind of states. And if you mess with that, believe me, you're gonna be out of office, and Republicans know that. So, on the other hand, you have other states like Illinois, New York, California. These are states that have strict gun laws. Nevertheless, they have some of the most violent places. You don't have to always point at mass shootings where 13 and 14, 15 people die, which is horrible. But you have some of these cities, some of these neighborhoods where, more than that die every week, you see. And in the course of a year, you have hundreds of folks, even with the strict gun laws. So this is an issue of the heart. This is an issue of our worldview. What is it in the mind of these folks that convince themselves that going and killing all these folks is something that is justifiable? It's a scary thing to me that apparently this young man, he actually spoke of this plan on Facebook. Same social media that is so strict for other things. How can somebody like this can make such statements and not be flagged, not be taken serious? So until the United States take God serious, because at the end of the day, this is an issue of the heart. This is an issue that only God can resolve. Only God can penetrate the soul of man and drastically change the way we think. But we keep running to politicians, and all what politicians have are man-made ideas. This is a slap in the face of God. This is us telling God, we don't need you. We can resolve this thing on our own. And the reality is that we can't. The more we distance ourselves from God, the more we're going to see situations like this. So my heart goes out to the last few weeks alone. We have had a few of these shootings. But again, don't waste your time with the government. It is the solution is not there. You as a parent, are you dedicating time to your sons and daughters? Are you teaching them the way they should go? Take the time from the time they're children. Or are you so busy at work or so busy trying to make money that you're ignoring your children? That somebody else is raising your children? That they are on social media all day long learning other viewpoints, other ways of looking at the world, being desensitized when it comes down to life. So this is a massive, massive work that is start at home. Teaching our children the value of life, teaching our children about God, teaching our children the 10 Commandments, things like that. As I say, if you have our children playing video games, violent video games all the time, if you turn to music and music is just preaching this message of violence, where do you think that's going to go? It's going to manifest. So, yes, we can point out at the government, there are some things that they can do, but point out at these video games. Point out at this some of the music that we listen to that is so violent, So again, put God at the center, and you as a parent, talk about it, deal with this, and make sure that you are affecting the way your children think. Because if not, somebody out there is, and somebody convinced this 18-year-old that it was okay to do what he did.
must be a higher way, a higher way. There must be a higher way of love. There's no greater love expressed by anyone that in God. There must be a better place. There must be there must be a higher place.